Finally. So, today's agenda is the following. We have a general overall view in about 30 or 20 minutes. It might be a little bit shorter, but I did this because after some beers and snack, in 15 minutes, we will talk about our internal browser extension and all the experience we gained during the development. And that is actually might be a little bit longer than I expected. No, not half an hour, but like a little bit, 10 minutes extra. So, just as I said, the topic is today. Oh, sorry. No, first of all, I want to introduce myself. My name is David Balatoni. I am an escalation engineer here at LifeRay Hungary. LifeRay is a Java-based portal solution, and LifeRay Hungary basically or mainly supports this product to its customer, to the EMEA region. And an escalation engineer is we have a customer support engineer who is in direct contact with our clients. And when a customer support engineer can't resolve or can't reproduce a problem that easily, they will escalate it to us. So basically, this is like a second line or a third line support. I am an avid Microsoft fan. I was once told that I may be the largest Microsoft fan here in Hungary. I even have a perfect condition Zune HD Platinum, which is like, I think we only have 4 or 5 here in Hungary. And in Central Europe, there was a program for the avid Microsoft fans. This was called Microsoft First League, and I'm currently still an official Microsoft First League member. I don't know if the program is still running or not, because Microsoft didn't tell us anything about it. My nickname is Balchida everywhere. Just Google it. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, GitHub, and a lot more. If you are interested in my personal life or something, just ask me in this pause, or not pause, in the when we drink some beer. Yeah. So browser extensions. Browser extensions are symbiotes of our browsers, just as I said before. Just like a sea anemone and a clownfish, when in the ocean they are basically sharing the same place. The sea anemone protects the clownfish, and the clownfish keeps the sea anemone clean. Or in the Marvel Comics, Carnage and I'm gonna cheat a little bit. Yeah, Venom, sorry, I always forget. They are living symbiosis with their symbiotes. But maybe Wikipedia is more has more on it. The browser extensions are used for improving a browser's user interface security or accessibility, blocking advertisements, and various other features to make browsing the internet easier and more pleasant. So now we know what are browser extensions, but how we got here. Let's start with a little bit history. Back in 1995, we had the Netscape Navigator 2.0 release, and in it they introduced the NP API, or the Netscape plugin API, application programming interface. And this was basically if you developed a plugin based on this API, you could declare content types. In this example, you declare an MP3 content type, and you can modify the browser's content between that object that you declared. It also had scripting support, so if you have declared a content type, you can also like interact with the rest of the page, not just in a sandbox, but with the rest of the page itself. And some examples are Flash. Java Flash still is based on on this old APIs because Firefox deprecated it for some time, but they still support Flash for some reason. Java is another example, and Silverlight if you are coming from the Microsoft side. And just as I said, it is now deprecated on basically all of the major browsers. I think Firefox has some forks that still contains the code that supports this functionality. So you can download those separately, but those are not supported by the Mozilla Foundation. Yes, Firefox. Firefox in 2004 came with the MP API support, and basically added another layer, so you couldn't have that much native access to the browser's architecture, but it made easier to program plugins and extensions for it. And just as I said, they removed it in Firefox 57. Next up is Internet Explorer. We couldn't miss the winner of the first browser war. Internet Explorer had an extra plugin that made it possible to support the previously mentioned Netscape API, but they also introduced two extra technologies. One of is the browser helper objects, which is basically can modify the UI of the browser more easily. And the second one is ActiveX, and this is basically modifies the content of the page itself. So similarly to MP API, you can have you can declare like, for example, an MP3, and the Windows movie, Windows, how the player called in Microsoft Windows, the Windows Media Player, sorry. So the Windows Media Player can have an ActiveX plugin, and when you see a movie on the internet, it will automatically inject the Windows Movie Player, the player experience to the browser page. The problem is that because of the popularity of Internet Explorer, and because these technologies, especially the browser helper objects, have like unrestricted full access to the browser, they can even, in some cases, can even write to the operating system's registry, which is like, why? Just why? It was used for various malware activities, and in the end they didn't deprecate it, but they introduced some kind of management. You have a separate browser plugin management interface now, starting from Internet Explorer 8. And funnily, it's still supported today because Windows 10 still includes Internet Explorer 11 by default, and for legacy reasons it's still in it, and those technologies are still supported. Just to get a more clear picture, browser helper objects are basically the reason why your grandparents' computer looks like this. So these, all of them are browser helper objects. So this was a short history. Let's enter the new era. Because all of the major browsers deprecated those old NP APIs, we needed some more Web 2.0 friendlier technology, and these are browser extensions. Sometimes they call it web extensions because it uses the web technologies that our web is built on right now. JavaScript, HTML5, and CSS3. And this new technology is currently supported by all major browser vendors and by all major browsers today: Chrome, Opera, Firefox, Edge. I know that these browsers have forks and stuff. Those still support it as well. But how really browser extension or a web extension looks like? It all starts with this. Basically, the heart of web extension is the mainfest.json. It contains all the data that describes what is that extension is. It contains the version number, the description, the name. The version number is important because if you bump up this number by 1 or by some number, then if you release that, your user's browser will automatically update it. It also contains the permissions you will ask for the user. These can be like sites that I wanna get permissions for liferay.com in this example and all of the subpages. But there are named permissions, like in this example I ask for the currently open tab that the user is on. And also it contains the rest of the content scripts, the background page, which we'll talk about just in a moment. So browser extensions can have browser actions. They can declare a browser action or a page action. They look like the same. The difference is that a browser action is constantly active. If you have a page action, it still is at the same spot and still can have like this is basically just an HTML page with some JavaScript and CSS. They can still have all this, but you have to say which page you wanna display and have the page action active. I don't have a good example right now for that. But for the browser action, in this example, the popular AdBlock Plus, you can set some basic options, maybe disable the AdBlock itself, and access the options menu, which we talk about later. They can also have a background page. In this case, the AdBlock Plus declares a background script that will run in the background, obviously, and will block the content I don't need. Right now on this page, I'm not sure if you can see it. I have 5 blocked content, and this was basically done by the script running in the background. Background pages can be written in JavaScript. It can be written in HTML as well, but it is not encouraged by Chrome and Mozilla nowadays, because you don't see, the user don't see it, and if you have a JavaScript, both of these mentioned browsers will generate a background page from your JavaScript file. I think Chrome will deprecate this method eventually, like in 1 year, and Firefox definitely supports it, but I don't know if they have any plans for deprecating it. What other things can do by the browser extension? Oh yes, they can have an option page. In this case, AdBlock Plus has a separate page for it, but in some cases you can integrate these kind of options into the browser itself, and this will be displayed as embedded to the extension management interface of the browser. These are like still they can access to the browser extensions data, so it's a good thing, and they can also, so this is just an HTML page as well. What's more important is content scripts. Content scripts are basically the scripts we inject to the page that will run. In this example, Grammarly reminds me that I don't really know English as well, and corrects me that I would like to talk about that. Content scripts can be CSS and JavaScript. You cannot inject an HTML directly from the browser extension's main fast file. You have to write some script for it if you really want to inject or have an iframe, maybe, but this is like restriction. So in the next part, I'm going to talk about an internal browser extension that we developed internally, which basically helps our support everyday life. So let's start. As I talked with some of you, I already said that Live3 Hungary basically provides support for the EMEA region, and for that we use a system which is internally developed and based on Live3, which is called Live3 Enterprise Support Application, or LISA. With this, this is the thing we work every day as a support engineers. And last year, our support manager had the idea to have some kind of metrics or insights how our customer support engineers and all the support engineers basically are doing. And one part of our work is in LISA, and our colleague wrote a script that generates some kind of metrics based on how fast we resolve the tickets, for example. And this is like an aggregated result, so not each individual support engineer knows how the metrics goes, but we have regional numbers, and we are basically trying to reach those common goals to push those numbers up. And for this, my support engineer asked Zoli, my colleague, if he has any idea how should we display these kind of metrics to our support engineers. And because we need to know, our support engineers, we need to know if how they are doing, how the whole support are doing. Should we just lay back because there are all the numbers are great, or should we pump those numbers up because those are rookie numbers? And he eventually came up with a temper monkey script or grease monkey script, which is basically a user script. You have a browser extension in your browser, and you can add a custom JavaScript that will be applied to the determined page you select in those scripts. And it worked well because it displayed the numbers, but I pitched the idea because I had experience with browser extensions that I think we shouldn't go in that way, because, for example, when we would like to our support engineers to install this custom script, we have to install a separate extension and select this custom user script and install it, and how are we going to update this script? So there were so many question marks, which some of them eventually answered, but there was the big question mark is performance. And basically I wanted to achieve the most performant experience for our support engineers, because like if something takes 2 extra seconds more, that's a lot of time. If you have to wait 2 extra seconds for like every minute, that's not cool. And also we couldn't maintain this code as well. We couldn't have that much accessibility to the browser APIs with user script, because I already had in mind that we should connect our internal support systems as well with these browser extensions, or more through this browser extension. And the first part was, which is the most important, I think, is let's name this extension, because naming is everything. So because I love playing with words, I called it lasagna because it's funny, or I thought it was funny. I basically didn't have any time to draw any logo for it, but yeah, so it looks like this. Lisa, how Lisa looks like. I'm gonna show you the top secret internal ticketing system. This is how our ticketing system looks like without lasagna. We have the tickets itself, we have the ticket number, the subject, the assignee. This is what our support engineers and me works in every day. And we basically added those metrics to the top of the page Wow, wow. But then, as I said, we had much more like a plan for this extension, because developing an extension just for this specific reason is an overkill. So, how can we improve our support engineers' experience? Like, I think we can change this listing, make it more compact, make it more easier to use, and this is basically a jQuery plugin called .tables. And what we are doing here is we have all the data you saw in the previous slide. We display that, we parse all the data and we display that in a searchable table. Why is this important? Because Lisa, for example, uses backend-based ordering. So every time I would like to order the tickets by status, here in this example, I have to wait like 2 or 3 seconds, depending on the server load, how to order these tickets. And with introducing the tables, we were able to, like, this is just instant. I can't say enough. We also have free-form text search here, which I didn't made any videos for it. But basically, all the data that contains in the table, you can search for it freely. If you want to search for the date, you can do that. If you want to search for the ticket description, you can do that. But if you have to search through all the tickets in Lisa, you need to use the separate search, which is still in the built-in Lisa form. What we added? We added some extra coloring to make our customer support engineers more. So I had a problem when I was working on Lisa. I tend to post things to the customers that I didn't intend to post it. And we have some kind of internal communication as well. And when I want to say to my colleague something that will stay and can be searchable later on through Lisa, I shouldn't post that to the customer. So we just colored the tabs and the background of the input text box, and this dramatically dropped the rates of miscommenting. We also, as I said, we have multiple internal systems. One of them is Liferay App, which is a Java-based tool we use for environment setup. When a customer reports a problem, they have a specific environment. They might use Tomcat for the application itself. They might use MySQL or MariaDB or MSSQL and so on and so on. And we have all those environment data on the ticket itself. And what Liferay App does, if we input the correct, if we select those kind of environment parameters, it will automatically set up a Liferay bundle for us. The problem is, it was manual. So you couldn't just say that I need an environment for this ticket. So I worked with my colleague who develops this internal tool, and we basically connected the extension and the tool via WebSocket. And it's just like if you need to build an environment, you have a button on the side bar, and you press it, and LiveFree will start it up. It will build the environment for you, and after that, all you need to do is just start up that, and you can start reproducing that issue. I'm gonna go back just to the Lisa Dia, slide, because I haven't told you why we are doing this. We have this internal support application, which is developed by the US LiveFree, and when initially we wanted to integrate this kind of functionality into Lisa, but it turned out if we want to develop more fastly, then we need to use something separate. Because if we push a code that's need automated testing, that's need manual testing, it was so much extra administration that we didn't want. And basically we want to use that. If we think about a new functionality, we can test it through a browser extension. And if it looks like that, oh, this is a cool function, then the Lisa team can integrate it to the ticketing system directly. And that was the second part why we used a separate extension and didn't develop directly to Lisa. Also, it is important to note that, again, this is developed by LiveFree USA, our mother company, and the turnaround time between us is because of the time zones and stuff. It's just really long, and this is the sort of reason I think why we use that. So we have this extension. We have the name. I only showed the functions, what it can do. But the thing is that we don't want to spend much time with unnecessary development. So our support manager, I talked with our support manager, and we agreed that we need to find So as you previously could say, let's start again. So as I previously mentioned, browser extensions support various browsers and browser vendors. But the difference between them can be quite large, and we didn't want to waste any extra time for extra development that wouldn't end up being used. For example, why would I need to develop this extension for Opera if nobody uses Opera in our support? Or why do I need to develop the extension for Safari if Apple just decides I'm gonna deprecate this because I don't know why. So that's why I talked with our support manager, and we decided that we need to find those browsers. We need to tell our support engineers, you need to use these ones, and the others are not supported by our extension. And it is okay, but you have to choose wisely, because you might end up like not using or developing for one kind of browser, and that guy who might uses Opera might be sad a little bit. So we need to choose that, but we need to choose wisely. Let's see. We have these 4 major browsers currently, and I went through all of them and inspected what are they offering, how they are working. Let's start with the obvious one. It's Chrome. Chrome has currently is the winner of the second browser war. It has around 67% market share globally, and on our support, almost everybody uses it. What is even more important, that they are using callback-based asynchronous APIs, which we'll mention. Yeah, I will mention it later. Why is it important? They have a separate namespace when you declare some kind of extra browser-specific functionality with Chrome. They have a web store, which you can upload your extensions to it, and the users can download it. And what is the most important for us, because this is an internal extension, you can distribute extensions which are not listed in the store, and you can just give out the link, and only those can see that has that link. Or you can create Google groups, and all of the Google group members can basically use that extension as a beta program. So it's cool. Chrome offers very nice functionality. Let's go with Opera. Opera is more or less is the same as Chrome, because it uses the same rendering engine. It can install a Chrome extension if you install a separate extension for Opera. It can install from the Chrome store. It's a little bit awkward. And yes, they have a different web store. So if you wanna upload your extension, you need to register a different developer account. I forgot to mention at Chrome that if you wanna upload your extension, you have to pay like, I think, 10 or 15 bucks once, and you can upload and develop for every Google product, like Android. You can upload Android apps to the App Store. You can upload Chrome extensions as well. For if you want to develop from Chromebooks, then you can upload to those web stores as well. So yes, Opera is the same, almost the same as Chrome. Then yes, we can support that as well. The other interesting browser is Firefox. Firefox uses something called Web Extension APIs. Basically, they trying to create a standard for developing web extensions, and they call this as Web Extension APIs. The problem is, despite of the Mozilla Foundation's effort and the effort from the www.3c community, which is responsible for the browser extension standard draft, which is not official yet, Chrome and Google does not really participate in the standardizing of these kind of APIs and the whole browser extension development itself. But in like a year before, all the browser vendors, like all the major browser vendors, agreed that they need to have correct documentation where you can compare all the browser capabilities and how can you use them. And actually the Mozilla Foundation, the Mozilla Developer Network was selected for this, and they are hosting all the documentation for the browser extensions as well. Firefox, despite of Chrome, or contrary to Chrome, they are using the promise-based APIs, which is the future. It's more reliable than the callback-based APIs. All of the other browser is using the browser namespace. So if you develop for multiple browsers, you need to polyfill this namespace. Basically, you need to rename it to use it in Chrome. So we just basically have a tool which will automatically rename it if we build for Chrome. They have a web store as well for the add-ons, which is problematic because if you want to upload something, it goes through a manual validation. So a real person will validate it and check it if everything is okay, and you can't upload any minified code because that's not okay. Your extension will be immediately rejected, and it might take weeks from uploading your extensions to publishing it. But you cannot upload extensions to the store, to the Mozilla store, that can be accessed through a link, but you need to self-distribute it. You basically need to set up a separate web server, and you need to have a separate JSON file that will tell it, for this version, the browser needs to download this file, and Firefox will check every 24 hours if this file is changed. If yes, then it will download from that remote web server that file and will install it. And signing is required for both Chrome and Firefox. You basically need to upload to a separate part for signing in case of Firefox, and it will get you back not a zip file but an XPE file, and you can install it manually to your browser. Anyway, it will not work if you are not signing it, and that's all. Let's talk about the new guy, who is Edge. Edge uses the same namespace for their APIs as Firefox, though they are using callback-based APIs, not promise-based like Firefox. You can release through the Microsoft Store. You have to register it. I think it's now free, but it had some kind of cost like years before. And the part is that you need to, it's kind of a VIP list. If you have an extension and you want to publish it for Edge, you need to request access to the from the web extension team from Microsoft Edge, and they might give you a go, but usually not. They only have like 50 extension total in their store. They had an update like half a year ago, when they allowed unlisted extensions, and you cannot self-distribute extensions that will auto-update. You need to distribute it to the Microsoft Store, and that's it. So in the end, we choose the first 3 browser, and we didn't went with Edge, despite some of the user requests. And also, I talked about another competitor, which is Safari. Safari is currently the Voldemort of the browser extensions. The problem is, we don't talk about Safari because I don't know what Apple does right now, and why they are doing it. They have the Safari extensions, which is not the same APIs that you can see at Firefox or Chrome, and they will deprecate it at the end of this year. Why? If you want to develop something that can be hooked into Safari, you can develop a Safari app extension, which is basically a macOS app. So you have to use Xcode, you have to use a real MacBook. I don't know. I don't understand. And it is very expensive to develop a Safari app extension. As I mentioned, you need a machine that can run Xcode, which is probably a MacBook. So you have $1,000 already out of your pocket, and you need to subscribe for an Apple developer certificate, which is like $100 every year, and just to publish an extension. Alright, it's not fair, because you can publish iPhone and macOS and other apps as well, or sorry, iOS apps as well. But if you only want to develop for Safari, this is not a great way, and expensive. I want to talk about some of the tools what we use for this development. First of all, we done every release back in I think for half a year we done every release manually. So we didn't have the time to actually create some kind of polyfill or some kind of automated script that will release for Chrome, for Firefox, and for Opera as well. But after that, we found a good script, which is called the Web Extension Toolbox. Or actually, this is not one script. This contains 3 separate tools in it. You have a Webpack plugin, which can polyfill your different capabilities of the browser. It has the Web Extension Toolbox, which is the same name. It can automatically generate a manifest file for every browser. If I don't know how much you can see from back there, but basically what it does, if you prepend the name of the browser you want to target, and you build through this script, it will automatically change it to the according browser. In this case, we have a Chrome key and a Chrome and Opera key. For Chrome, both key will be built. For Opera, only the Opera key, and for the rest of them, or these keys are maybe like theming support that we don't support on Edge. That is not present on that manifest file. Also, there is the third tool in this toolbox, and it is a web extension generator. With it, you can easily kickstart your web extension project. It's a Yeoman-based tool. You just start the generator. You can basically fill out these data, what you would like to use, what kind of permissions you would like to ask the user. And it even helps with the Chrome Web Store assets. When I found this tool, I found it very useful, and I started contributing to it. And eventually, with this guy who is Henrik Wentz, we created a GitHub organization, and we are together developing these tools. And I hope it will someday conquer the world. Yeah, and another important tool is coming from Mozilla. They have a an npm package called WebEx. With it, you can build your extension for Firefox. You can sign it from or through the command line. You don't need to go to the website. And in this example, I demo that we can basically live edit. If I change the background color to red or to blue, WebEx automatically refreshes the browser, and as soon as we exit from this command line utility, it will destroy this Firefox instance, and this is basically a sandbox, and it will throw away as soon as you close it. So my question is, if you have any question, again. I haven't prepared any concrete code for this. All right. So here are the resources I used during this presentation. And as I mentioned earlier, I will upload this presentation and will link to the meetup page. I will upload the video recording, and I will upload the code I used in that one demo video that I just demoed right now. So again, I thank you for coming, and enjoy your pizza and beer. Thank you.